A low-carbon city built in the desert. A dream on the road to reality, or a green mirage?
Even on the same day in the middle of summer, the temperatures at the ground here are somewhere between sort of 12 and 15 degrees cooler than they are in the rest of Abu Dhabi.
We also meet the boy who's making sure camels survive amongst all the construction in the UAE. And Carmen's here with her latest guide to exploring the world via the web with her online check-in. Hello, I'm Fiona Foster. Welcome to Fast Track in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Over the past few decades, the UAE has seen a spectacular building boom, a boom that's been paid for by oil and is extremely dependent on it. But now there's a brave new project underway here, which is as far removed from the Emirates' image of gas-guzzling, air-conditioned, glass-towered metropolis as it's possible to get. The United Arab Emirates and sustainability are not words often found together in the same sentence. After all, the UAE has one of the worst per capita carbon footprints in the world. It's a place where fast cars and shiny glass skyscrapers made livable by 24-hour air conditioning are the norm, where you can even ski on snow when it's 40 degrees outside. But it's here in this most inhospitable of climates that work is underway on what is hoped will become a model for the world when it comes to low-carbon living. Masdar City. It's part of Abu Dhabi's stated vision to move away from its reliance on oil and transform itself into a business, cultural and tourism hub over the next 20 years. So how do you begin to build an environmentally friendly city in the middle of the desert? Well, the answer here in Masdar, it seems, is to combine the best of the future with what worked in the past. So what have you done here then, Alan, to make this energy efficient? Because Masdar is not just about cutting-edge technology. As director Alan Frost showed me, it's also about going back to ancient Arabic design principles.
And what we've done is we've brought the buildings quite close together. We're only running at sort of 4 to 5 story buildings maximum, so that you're not getting sort of wind pockets and things like that. But what then happens is that you can actually find shade, and what that overshadowing has done is reduce the energy load on all the buildings. And we've done some thermal imaging, and we've actually tested this particular street compared to a business as usual street in, say, the rest of Abu Dhabi or Dubai. And even on the same day in the middle of summer, the temperatures at the ground here are somewhere between sort of 12 and 15 degrees cooler than they are in the rest of Abu Dhabi.
To help take the heat out of this new city and cut down its dependence on air conditioning, even the traditional Arabic wind tower has been reimagined.
All these things were generally in gypsum, and the gypsum used to absorb the humidity. The one that we've done is actually in steel, and the idea is that it takes the prevailing wind, brings it down through the tower into the courtyard.
But while the blazing sun of Abu Dhabi may be Masdar's greatest challenge, it's also their greatest asset. And they've already built this 10 megawatt solar energy plant, the biggest in the Middle East, to help power the city.
Masdar City has invested a lot of time and effort on what we call advanced cooling systems, which can be conventional cooling systems but made much more efficient, or it can be completely new ways of cooling. For instance, we have a few pilot projects where we have tested solar cooling. That is a process whereby you convert the heat of the sun directly into chilled water.
And as the students working in this field of mirrors or heliostats showed me, experimenting is very much a part of what the building of Masdar's about.
So what happens is the sunlight falls on these heliostats, and then the light gets reflected onto the central tower, and each heliostat has a sensor that points towards one mirror at the central tower, and then it gets collected on the receiver.
You can heat a working fluid by which you can run a steam turbine and generate power.
But not everyone is convinced that projects like Masdar should be top of the sustainability priority list. There are those who argue that rather than building brand new cities from scratch, the emphasis should be on sorting out the highly unsustainable cities we already have.
New build in the desert is one model, but another, and one which is much more widely applicable, is looking at the cities we have. You can add on new interesting neighbourhoods. You can actually transform our existing transport systems within those cities. I feel we should probably be concentrating our energies on adapting and transforming our existing cities.
You can do it both ways. Again, I think the big fight will be in how do we retrofit existing cities. But at the moment, you know, having something like Masdar, which I think is, has become a bit of a role model and a bit of a beacon for sustainable development for other people to take away. You know, people can now start learning things from Masdar and take those into their own, back into their own climates.
أهلا بكم في مدينة مصدر.
So how are people going to get around Masdar City? Well, apart from electric vehicles and walking, there's this. This is the rapid personal transit network which runs underneath the city. And all you do is sit in one of these pods, there's no driver involved, and you press the button to your destination, and off it goes. It runs on a series of magnets that are embedded in the ground, so there's no track, it just goes on concrete, and it is completely carbon neutral, no harmful emissions whatsoever. It's a funny little thing, it does feel like something a bit out of a science fiction movie, and also a bit like a fairground ride. But it goes up to 40 kilometres per hour, so it's quite nippy. In a region where the gas guzzler is paramount, the novelty of a car-free environment is proving surprisingly popular on Masdar's market days.
We've had 15,000 visitors in a day, and what those people have wanted to do is park their cars, get out and walk. And it means that they've got the kids, they've got strollers, and in reality it's expats and Emirati alike. You know, everyone wants to do the same thing.
That may be an advantage in the future when it comes to appealing to tourists. Abu Dhabi is very keen to build up its tourism industry and has announced plans for branches of the Louvre, the Guggenheim and a new national museum to open in the Emirate over the next 5 years. With 2 hotels, one 4-star and one 5-star, planned for Masdar, the new city's hoping to become a destination in its own right.
If you look at the architect's plans, they are absolutely fantastic and mind-boggling. In the middle of the desert, you're going to have a green, livable city which has no impact on the environment. The truth is, of course, that realising that vision is long-term, it's technically uncertain, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And in fact, some other eco-cities across the world, a well-known example is Dongtan in China, has never got off the architect's board.
In the cutting-edge laboratories of Masdar, confidence remains high that the city can live up to its hype.
I think it will be an example because Masdar is not just, you know, an initiative. We have a people that believe on it, starting from the very high leaders of the UAE all the way to the students, the workers, the researchers. They are all believe in this. And I think this is what it takes to build a model city, people.
So what do you think of Masdar City? Would you be tempted to book yourself a low-carbon break here in future? Or would you prefer to cut your emissions by holidaying at home? Do let us know at our usual address, that's fasttrack@bbc.com, and we'll feature as many comments as we can. Now let's have a look at what else is making headlines in the travel world right now.
All Airbus Super Jumbos must be checked for hairline cracks, according to Europe's safety regulator. The continent's aviation safety agency made the order after Qantas found dozens of small cracks on one of its A380s last week. Airbus had already been asked to check its most frequently used planes. The manufacturer says they are still safe to fly in. Civil unrest and a police revolt have prompted countries around the world to warn their citizens against travel to the capital of the Maldives. There are no reports of violence at Male's airport or the surrounding islands, so it is still possible to take the seaplane to resorts as normal. If you're concerned about your trip, check with your tour operator before going. And could sitting in a window seat damage your health? American scientists have found passengers hemmed in by the window have an increased risk of deep vein thrombosis on long flights, as they tend to sit still for longest. So if you always plump for the view, make sure you're doing those leg exercises the doctors advise.
So far this year, two big European airlines have gone out of business, Spanair of Spain and the Hungarian national carrier Malev. 4 days before the Hungarian airline collapsed, Subhash Nair from Mumbai bought a ticket from Bucharest via Budapest to Copenhagen. He wants to know how he's going to get his money back and says that the airline is uncontactable. Well, Subhash, you're one of many Fast Track viewers who've been in touch, and sadly, when a scheduled airline goes bust, most passengers lose their money. It may be that you can claim on your travel insurance, but as it is, other airlines have stepped in and are offering rescue flights, typically around $100 or less for a one-way trip. And it's probably little consolation to know that your losses could have been steeper. In the past few weeks before it was grounded, Malev was selling seats very cheaply in a desperate bid to bring in cash and stave off collapse.
Coming up after the break, we've got more from here in Abu Dhabi, where we meet a boy who's determined to clean up the desert in order to help save the region's wildlife. And Carmen's here with her regular online check-in, where she's got a special tip for those of us who get lost all too easily once we hit foreign soil.